So I'm curious, how many of you watching this right now would have ever guessed that I was an asexual? How many of you have ever even heard of the term asexual in relation to a human? How many of you are or think you might be an asexual, but you're afraid to tell people that about yourself, maybe for fear of the consequences? What if you don't necessarily want to label yourself, but you've been harboring the secret that you don't really care much about intimate relationships? Well, those are some of the reasons that I want to be a little bit vulnerable today and talk about something that I've known about myself for the last 20 years, that I fall under the umbrella of asexuality, like so many millions of other people on this planet. I was wanting to do this video on every April 6th, which is Asexuality Visibility Day, but I always fail because, I don't know, life. But today I actually feel called to do this video because of a conversation that I had with my hairdresser of all people yesterday. This conversation just floored me, and I haven't been able to get it off my mind. I've known this woman for 4 years, and she told me a lot about her life, but yesterday she went deep. For some reason, she just started venting about her lack of desire for adult intimacy. Okay, I'm going to be PG-13 here because I'm going to be posting this on YouTube. But anyway, she was telling me that she was having a hard time with relationships because of her lack of desire for adult intimacy. She even admitted that there's often been times that she's just in tears. I mean, she's confessed that she often tries to avoid relationships because of her lack of desire for adult intimacy. Has just been such a major problem with the men that she's dated. So I asked her if she had ever considered dating someone asexual. And she looked at me and asked, "What is that?" She had never even heard that term before as it relates to a human. And this was a 33-year-old woman I was talking to. And it instantly reminded me of the moment that I first heard about asexual humans. I was actually 28 years old, and that knowledge alone forever changed my life. It seemed to spark something in her too, my hairdresser, because she was suddenly excited about the idea of checking out some of these asexual dating websites. I'll actually put some of the links in the description below for anyone else who might be curious about that. But anyway, I'm hoping that I help my hairdresser in some positive way. And I'm making this video today because I know that my hairdresser is not alone. And I love to help people. I am certain that there are millions more people like me and her whose lives could potentially change for the better just by hearing about this unique category of people that tend to they fly so far under the radar. So even if the knowledge of knowing that you're not alone is helpful, then this video is worth it. So just for clarity, what is an asexual? Okay, let's be a little technical here. An asexual person is someone who experiences little or no sexual attraction to others. It's considered a sexual orientation, meaning that meaning that it is a part of a person's identity. It's not a choice, okay? Simply put, an asexual, this is the way I put it, is someone in which there is very weak or no desire at all for sexual activity with another human. The desire for adult intimacy plays little to no part in our desire to form relationships with other people. But just like every other category in life, we all exist on this spectrum, okay? So now I'm not an authority figure on any of this, all right? The best thing to do is to ask someone what their preferences are. So I'm only speaking in generalities here, okay? But typically we can range from don't ever touch me whatsoever, I'm totally repulsed by sex, to I'm willing to engage in adult intimacy once in a while with someone that I love, so long as I know that this is not an absolute requirement to maintain the relationship. That's very important. I'm personally on that end of the spectrum. I absolutely refuse to be in a relationship now where adult intimacy is a requirement for the relationship to be maintained. Bye-bye. I'm not torturing myself that way. And quite frankly, I'm not going to torture another man that way that may want it more than me, right? Now, personally, this is just like a weird personal preference for me. I do wish that we could rename asexual to hetero non-sexual, is actually what I call myself, bi non-sexual and homo non-sexual. I think that most often the word asexual is attributed to an organism that reproduces on its own, and it seems to imply that we are just not attracted to humans at all. And that's certainly not the case. For me, for example, I'm attracted to men, but it's strictly a physical and an intellectual attraction. I'm drawn to super smart men. I love the physique of an athletic looking man, but there has just never been one single time in my life where those attractions have triggered me to want to engage in intimate acts. I know that sounds very bizarre to the average sexual person. Like, what? My mind is blown. But that is the truth. I simply don't need that part from a man, like literally or figuratively speaking. I have easily gone like a decade without it, and it's never fazed me, not one time. So that's me being very transparent. Another curious question that people probably have is, do we ever have the urge to have intimate relations? Yes. But just generally speaking, the desire for it typically doesn't trigger a need to involve someone else, if you get what I'm saying, right? It's no different for us than when you're thirsty, right? You go get a drink. You're hungry, you go and eat. Your bladder starts pinging, you go to the bathroom. It's just another biological urge that we have to tend to once in a while, but just like eating, drinking, and peeing, there's no requirement to resolve that urge with another person present. So years ago, I was actually chatting with another asexual in this forum, and he said it perfectly. He said, sometimes you just gotta clear the pipes. It's genuinely that technical for us. We gotta go handle that and keep it moving. So I hope that helps to clearly define who we are. But I always do feel like the best practice is just to ask an individual asexual person what he or she wants as far as intimacy is concerned. Hell, I think that's a really great practice for anybody that you get into a relationship with. I think it's important to have your intimate needs aligned with a long-term partner, even if you are a sexual person. It's pretty important to know and to not assume. Anyway, I'm talking about this because I realize how beneficial this could be for millions of people out there like me and my hairdresser. And yes, I said millions. I think there are a staggering number of people who don't give a fuck about intimate acts, but this culture that we're immersed in gives us this false belief that everybody is a horn dog. And that is just not reality. But sadly, I don't think the majority of people have even considered that. My hairstylist, she just really took me back to those years when I finally discovered this world of people like myself, and it was so liberating. Before that, I thought I was all alone on a piece of driftwood in a big ocean, and come to find out there was a massive island with millions of people just like me that I never knew about. And finding that out was one of the main reasons, I'll be honest, that I finally decided to get a divorce. For a few years after that, though, there was part of me that was bitter that I had not discovered asexuality before getting married and having kids. It made me wonder how different my life would be. Would I have found someone to love me as I am? Had I known about asexuality maybe in my teenage years, would I still be married to that person? And we could have raised our kids together in a loving family. So it was hard to stop thinking about. How many years I had wasted essentially being a fraud and living my life so inauthentically. Not only that, but how many years of my ex's life did I waste being an unwitting fraud? It's one of those things that I can't ruminate on for long because I'd just be in tears. It makes me emotional despite the fact that it was my ignorance that led me to live so inauthentically for the first half of my life. So the main reason for this video is if I could save anyone from that sort of mental torture, the torture that I suffered through, if I can save anybody from that just by talking about this today, then I'm willing to be vulnerable. If I can help to educate someone about the fact that this category of people exists and rescue them from the ignorance that might be causing them to be an unwitting fraud like I was, then exposing myself like this is absolutely worth it. If being this open can be the catalyst for someone finally leaving a relationship that's not meant for them, then my time here is worth it. If getting on this soapbox inspires someone to start seeking love in the right places of the internet, then my time here is definitely worth it. I just hope that ultimately there are many people watching this who can learn from my life story. Even if you're not an asexual, perhaps it'll finally help you to understand someone you're currently in a relationship with who seems standoffish about intimacy. Maybe you can pass this information on to them and you can both figure out how to move forward together, or maybe even apart. So the possibilities are endless. So for anyone struggling with identity or struggling with talking about this intimacy crisis, if you will, I want to look into this camera and say that if you are a person who exists on the extreme ends of the bell curve, for whatever reason, you are not alone. I don't care what category of people you're in or what label you might even want to give yourself. If you have ever felt like a misfit that doesn't understand the mentality of the people who are like partying in the middle of the bell curve, you are not alone. And I'd like to encourage you to not let people drag your ass into the middle of that bell curve. That was one of my faults that I still regret. So be strong. Don't let them guilt you into putting on a fucking mask and pretending to be like them. I mean, really, how insulting is that for your friends and family to insist that you're always wearing a mask to appease them or for you to be loved by them? That is so fucking insulting, and it is the definition of conditional love. So love yourself enough to insist on unconditional love. Fuck putting on the mask. That mask will probably likely only serve to hide your tears and your misery. I know that all too well. So to put it simply, I'm starting this YouTube channel because I have a deep desire to encourage people to live authentically. With all the peer pressure and the cultural pressure and even religious pressure, I know that it is often hard to live authentically. I think it's especially hard when it comes to this matter of this intimacy crisis in relationships. I think people who don't care about intimacy, they fly so far under the radar. But one of the reasons is because they might be slightly embarrassed. That we aren't like those hypersexualized people in TV shows and movies. I think that stuff has just brainwashed all of us into thinking that that is the norm. But I think it's time to start setting shame and embarrassment aside if you want to move towards a more fulfilling life. And yes, that might mean that your confessions and the shameless version of you, that you might lose friends. So what? It shouldn't be about quantity. You are freeing yourself up to attract quality friends and loved ones, even if there are only a few of those people. But those few will likely love the real you and love you unconditionally. But to get there, it's going to take a little bit of bravery to speak up. My hairdresser has been doing my hair for 4 years now, and I never would have guessed that she was just like me had she not been courageous enough to speak her truth. Now she might be creating a profile on an asexual site as I sit here and do this. And she might be finally on a path to a more rewarding relationship. But how can you start on a similar path if you're not willing to be honest about who you are and what your real wants and desires or your lack of desires may be? With somebody who's gay or transgender, there might, I say the word might be some like outward indications about their identities, but there is no particular look or a swagger to an asexual person or to somebody who just doesn't care about intimacy. It's nothing that shows there so much so that it's a dead giveaway for other people. For instance, I bet the majority of you watching this right now probably would have never guessed that about me. It took me opening up my mouth for it to be known. So if you are someone who is like my hairdresser and you don't give two shits about intimacy, and I don't care if you want to label yourself as asexual or not, that's really irrelevant. I would just like to encourage you to be brutally honest with people about your lack of desire for intimacy. There are 8 billion people on this planet, And the internet makes people living on these outskirts of the bell curve just a mouse click away from each other. So with so many people on this planet who can so easily connect, that you can so easily connect with, there is bound to be someone who is looking for someone just like you. There's bound to be. This includes asexuals, transgender people, autistic, or maybe you're like me and you're an extreme introvert or a black female atheist, which I know is pretty rare. But no matter what it is in your life that you find yourself living on the outskirts of the bell curve, I would encourage you to shamelessly let people know that you live at, 123 Misfit Avenue. Okay, because being authentic, in my opinion, is the only way to give yourself a fighting chance at attracting someone who will love you for who you genuinely are. That's why I believe that being authentic is one of the greatest gifts that you can ever give to yourself. I truly do believe that. You got to look at it this way. You're here on this earth for only a blip of time in comparison to the 13.8 billion years that this universe is said to have been here. Why do you want to waste what little precious time you have here being a fraud? Be shamelessly you. And, for those who don't appreciate you, fuck them. Let them be free to find people, that will, love them for who they are. You spend your time and your energy embracing and appreciating the new people who are going to appreciate the real version of you. Spend your energy building bonds with people who love you for who you truly are. So, as I said, just give yourself the beautiful gift of authenticity. So, I hope that helped someone today.